Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and today we are joined by a repeat guest, Daniel Schulof of KetoNatural Pet Foods. Daniel, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's nice to be back.
So for anyone that hasn't listened to our previous episodes, KetoNatural Pet Foods makes a low carbohydrate kibble. They're very clear on their transparency with respect to the carbohydrate load. And that could be important for a number of reasons. Daniel, for anyone who doesn't know a little bit of that background, can you tell us a little bit about KetoNatural Pet Foods and that carbohydrate content?
So we sell unique products. There's nobody else selling. If you're in the market for something that I can describe in these general terms, that we're the only one that can provide it. There's just nobody else making stuff like this, which is kibble, but with ultra low carbohydrate content and as much animal protein as you can find in kibble. So our carbohydrate content is less than 5% digestible carbohydrate, which is 80% less than the best other kibbles out there, the origins of the world. It's 90+% less than Science Diet or Pro Plan or something like that. So really, really different. The protein content is the highest in the United States pet food industry right now in terms of kibble, north of 46%. And 90+% of it comes from animal protein. So it's just like, if you want the kind of nutritional profile that you can only find you thought you could only find in a raw diet, but you can't afford a raw diet or you're not willing to deal with the inconvenience of it, we are a reasonable option for you. Why do we do it? We make products like that because it is unquestionably healthier for dogs than it is to feed them another kibble product with a typical garden variety nutritional profile of 30% protein, 50% carbohydrate. I know that I can say that without any qualifiers because I wrote an entire book about that one subject. Mm-hmm. 2016, I published this book. It's called Dogs, Dog Food, and Dogma. And it's about why so many dogs in the United States are fat, basically. Mm-hmm. And the answer, as I explain over 400 pages, is carbohydrate. Is, in essence, carbs make you fat because they make your blood sugar go up. And the same thing applies for dogs, except for the fact. And so, okay, easy, should be no problem, except for the fact that carbohydrate is the backbone of the U.S. pet food ecosystem. And so, we have obesity in more than half of the dogs in the country because it's so central to how pet food is sold in the U.S. right now to just lean very, very heavily into cheap carbohydrate. And so it's a big pickle.
Mm-hmm. I have so many people who reach out to me and they'll send me a dog food and they're like, is this good? Is this good? And I'm like, well, define good first off, because I don't know what you define as good. Are you looking solely at price point? Are you looking at longevity and health of your dog? What are we talking about good here? And more often than not, when they send it to me, the nutrition label doesn't have much. I mean, I really can't tell the makeup. I'm like, I don't actually know how much protein, how many carbs, and I don't really know the source of most of this. Or some of the line items, you're like, I don't think I would call that quote unquote good. And so I think, as we've discussed before, and as we're going to get into today, the industry, the pet food industry, has been so lax and so, what's the other word that I'm looking for? Just not transparent with respect to what they require. And I know there are some changes coming down the pipeline with respect to pet food nutrition fact labeling. So tell us a little bit about some of the changes that we might see.
Yeah, I mean, I think in order to set the table for that part of the conversation, because there's really cool changes happening, good for consumers, good for everybody changes. Mm-hmm. it's like, think of like a good place to start is like, think of how differently the subsectors of the US pet food market look compared to subsectors of human packaged foods goods. Like, it is often said in all kinds of professional pet food circles that over the past few decades, have experienced greater humanization of pets. That, like, pet food industry trends trickle down from the human side, because we essentially love these animals like they're our children, and so we want to use the same ish decision making framework. Okay, is this healthy? Okay, is this that kind of stuff? Nevertheless, there's not, like, if you go to you know the 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 energy bar aisle or the cereal aisle or any other packaged foods aisle for human foods, there's not like a big dedicated space for grain free. You
Right.
know, there's not a big dedicated space for meat first ingredient. It's not a big dedicated space for raw as opposed to not raw. Those are things that have become subsectors of the pet food industry
Hmm.
that don't really make sense on the human side. Like, it's not that we're missing something. It's that, like, on the human side, we sort of recognize that those don't really hit. They don't like hit the bullseye of like optimal nutrition. There are some subsectors, but they don't look the same as in pet food. And the reason for that is because the labeling requirements on the pet food side allow for super sneaky behavior. And so
Hmm.
all those things have sprung up as a way to sort of suggest to consumers that products contain something healthy, but without actually having to tie it back to the nutritional content that's not particularly good in the first place.
Right.
If you can hide the nutritional content, then you can kind of build up the health halo around something. And in the U.S., what we require pet food brands to put on label on their bags is a kind of, when it comes to nutritional content. So, like,
Hmm.
what are the nutrients in this thing? Is a panel that I'm sure you're familiar with called the Guaranteed Analysis Panel,
Hmm.
right? I have these little, like, this is an example. It probably is hard to see, but the Guaranteed Analysis Panel is where the numbers are on
Hmm.
food, right? And so it's it's clearly not that useful. Like, if they're in a cluster of ways. One is everything is expressed on a percentage basis as opposed to a weight basis. Like, if you, by contrast, this is my Coke Zero, and here's my FDA's nutrition facts panel. And
Hmm.
in every, like, item that's listed there, and it's, if you go to the United Kingdom and you look at like their packaging, it's the same thing. It's listed by weight, and so you can judge on the basis of that, like, is this more or less than what I'm presently feeding? When you do it on a percentage basis, it becomes hard because
Hmm.
moisture varies dramatically product to product. Raw diets are 75% moisture. Kibble products are 10% carbohydrate or moisture. And so the numbers on what nutritional content is in there look all out of whack anyway. But even bigger deal than that, the really big problem is that the Guaranteed Analysis Panel does not require the disclosure of carbohydrate content.
Hmm.
So, like, if you are shopping for a new cereal to feed your kids, or shopping for any other kind of packaged food that you're going to eat for yourself, of course, one of the things, if you know, even if you have a kindergarten education in human nutritional science, you know that carbohydrate plays a unique role. And there are plenty of people that on an everyday basis are deciding, I want to try to stay away from carbs as much as possible. And they're able to live that out. They're able to make good decisions in light of that, because the FDA's nutrition facts panel, of course, includes a line item for carbohydrate.
Hmm.
The analysis panel doesn't. As a result, pet food companies can hide the carbohydrate content of their products. And it's been that way for 40 years.
Yeah.
Consumers and, like, you know, industry advocates, those kind of, like, people trying to effectuate progress in this industry, have been like banging the drum about improving this for a very long time before I
Hmm.
got into pet food in 2011. And the organization that sets the rules has been really, really stick its fingers in its ears, really slow. But finally, they like caved. It's
Mm-hmm.
about like how to describe it. In late 2023, the organization, which is called AFCO, they set the rules for pet food,
Mm-hmm.
agreed to adopt a whole new quantitative nutrition facts panel on all pet food labeling, and it's going to look almost exactly like the FDA's nutrition facts panel that we all use much more successfully when it comes to human packaged foods. And that means, among other things, for the first time in the history of the industry, all pet food brands are going to have to disclose not just the total carbohydrate content of the products, but all these like subgroups of carbohydrates, how much
Mm-hmm.
fiber, how much sugar, how much starch, all that is going to be right on the label in grams. So you're going to be able to see that switching from science diet to our product is going to remove 90% of the carbohydrate from your dog's diet, something like that. You're going to be able to see that the prescription only diet that the vet recommends for your dog with diabetes is
Mm-hmm.
40% digestible carbohydrate. And so I predict that it's a big understatement to say it's going to have a major impact on consumer behavior. I think it's the single most important change in the history of the industry, and it's going to blow a lot of people's minds. Like you
Yeah.
don't, if you're not listening to dog podcasts or going around giving interviews about doggy subjects, you could be forgiven for thinking that a product that is grain free, wolf on the bag, meat first ingredient is basically all meat. It sure suggests that to me. In reality, it's 60% carbohydrate. That's going
Mm-hmm.
to blow a lot of people's minds and cause big change because it's such an important nutrient in the U.S. pet food ecosystem right now.
Yeah, you mentioned prescription diets, and I have a few friends whose dogs are diabetic, which I do think I've seen a little bit more frequently. Which we won't dabble in that too much.
Totally, I'm happy to talk about that. It's
But
hard to get.
these dogs with diabetes are being prescribed these prescription diets, and I'm going to put that in quotes because they're like, "Oh yeah, my dog started this, and like nothing really changed." And I'm like, "Well, it's probably the carbohydrate content." And they're like, "No, like the vet recommended it." And it's like, well, we don't need to get into all of that and how a lot of the vets get persuade and or trained by some of the major players in prescription pet food and perhaps not knowing that overall content of the carbohydrates in there. They don't, maybe they truly don't know that what they're prescribing is 50 to 60% carbohydrate, and they might really think they're doing the right thing.
You got to squint. I mean, like I have a lot of personal friends that are vets. The very first investor in our company, personal friend of mine, was a vet. I have kind of a disproportionate number of personal friends that are vets by virtue of what I do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wrote my whole first book. Vets being wrong about these scientific subjects is a big part of the problem. Okay, I document that in the book. It's clearly part of like the central part of the problem.
Yeah.
But like, who's to blame for that? Well, when I wrote the book, I definitely took the perspective that you can't blame the vets because it's like it's really, really hard to take yourself completely outside of an information ecosystem that you've been raised up in and
Mm-hmm.
go, let me just step outside of this altogether and listen to these people who haven't been subjected to the same education I've been. And they might be right about something. It's like, that's just not how the human brain tends to work. People within the
Yeah.
cult, like you're in the cult, you believe that you're going to catch the comet or whatever. And so it's hard. And I don't believe that people get into veterinary medicine out of a sense of greed or corporate interest. Like they love animals. Clearly, they're spending
Right.
years of their life. They want to do this for a living. They have good intentions. However, with the diabetes issue, I have seen my experience has been more or less the same as you,
Mm-hmm.
and that tests my ability to feel that way. You know what I mean? Like when
Right.
I just think it's like that's so obvious. It's professional negligence of a sort to be like, yes, I think like this has to be so unthinking. You can't, if you exercise just the tiniest bit of critical thought and you go, wait, this diet I'm prescribing to this diabetic is 40% carbohydrate.
Mm-hmm.
How can that be the right answer? And so I have that to me tests it. But there's also something super interesting that that subject touches on, which is that earlier this year, two brand new studies got published. And we can talk about some doggy nutrition studies for a second.
And a side note on these studies, these are not marketed to pet parents. These are not pushed out readily to the public. And I think one issue within all of this is a lot of us go just to our vet, and it might just be a single vet, and it might be the vet you've gone to for 10, 20, 30 years. And if they're in their own echo chamber and they're also not looking at these new studies, if they're also not invested in learning more and changing their ways of thinking, then the information that the pet owners are being fed is the same old, same old. And so I think that's why it's so important for us to get on these platforms that could reach so many people to inform them of these studies. Even doing what I do, I don't even see them all. And I'm like, oh, there was another study. Oh, there was this. I mean, it's interesting how so much information is swept under the rug, or just kind of like, let's just keep that quiet. That might affect our profits and our margins.
Yes, but it's also the case that it's like, you know how at the beginning of this conversation I was talking about how lots of brands, the better for you brands, just like go with this health halo concept and try to they're still hiding the ball. They're not really providing something that's meaningfully better than ProPlan. I have that recommend to people all the time. How does this brand look? How does that brand look? And I'm like, it's basically the same as save your money. Just feed
Yeah.
ProPlan and take your dog, buy your dog a few extra toys. It's because basically the same.
Right.
But what that means is that if you add up all the nutritional science studies that have been published, that have been performed and then published in peer-reviewed journals involving startup pet food brands over the past 20 years, the total number of studies on your list will be zero. Pet food startups don't do that. They just go with this we're going to figure, like the farmer's dog is a $1 billion company. They haven't
Yeah.
conducted one study. They've never once tried to put together actual scientific proof that their diets do something good for a dog. In contrast with that, KetoNatural Pet Foods has already been tested in two different peer-reviewed studies, and they touch directly on the subject that you're highlighting. Because
Mhm.
we basically reached out to university teams and we were like, here's the study we want to carry out. Can you guys do it for us? And we found these people at University of Guelph. It's a big research university in Toronto, and
Mhm.
a couple $100,000. So not that much. It's kind of like, for me, that's a huge chunk of money. I'm not as rich as the farmer's dog.
Right.
I felt strongly enough that the evidence we were going to build through it was going to be compelling, and we pulled the trigger on it. And essentially, the study looks like this: take dogs, same group of dogs, for 6 weeks, you feed them our diet. For 6 weeks, you feed them the leading prescription diet for dogs with diabetes in the United States, Hill's Metabolic, the one that I'm referring to when I say 40% digestible carbohydrate diet.
Mhm.
What do you think? And then we're going to look at all the metabolic parameters, basically everything that has to do with how dogs metabolize. What do you think those studies would show? Because they showed what you probably expected, which is the dogs on the non-prescription diet that a bald guy on his couch came up with wiped the floor with those made by one of the oldest pet food companies in the country, the organization that employs more veterinary nutritionists than any other organization on planet Earth, and has been
Mhm.
doing this pet food prescription thing for decades.
Yeah.
60% lower blood sugar for
Wow.
dogs on the, okay? Like, you were talking about not just a marginal difference. We completely wipe the floor with them. The dogs burn more energy. They burn more calories. Just feed them the exact same number of calories. Dogs on our diet burn more energy. They have
Mhm.
60% lower blood sugar, and they burn more body fat. As I explained in my book, carbohydrate is the root of the obesity problem. If you didn't have carbohydrate in the U.S. pet food ecosystem, you wouldn't have an obesity epidemic. You just can't make a dog fat without carbohydrate.
Mhm.
These two new studies prove it. I can send them to you after the show if you want to put them in the show notes. They're all punchy, it's cool stuff, and it's unfortunately, to get to what you were saying, there's publishing studies is one thing, using mass communications tools to get them out in front of enough people is another. And
Right.
as you mentioned, it's like you have a particularly challenging thing in pet food where it's like you have two different totally isolated universes of like audiences. Like the veterinary community and the lay pet owner community are just get all their information. They believe completely different things on
Yeah.
so many subjects that like, and they do that because they're like taught through very different media. And so like finding a way to reach both at the same time is it's a challenge. And so we're
Hmm.
going right now.
And talking about studies, I know that there is a I'll say newer because it just got published, study that you might want to talk about a little bit that kind of helps this whole grain-free idea and a lot of the claims, because we know grain-free became popular and then immediately became demonized by some of the biggest players in the game. And now I feel like we're in a little bit of leeway right here. I feel like a lot of pet owners are like grain-free, not grain-free. I'm not sure. I've heard this. I've heard this. So maybe you can touch on that a little bit too.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I'll say is that our diets don't contain any grains. We get our carbohydrate from peas.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, I don't in any way think that that's like a magical way or a particularly healthy way to go. Like, I don't think a grain free diet with the exact same protein and carbohydrate content as a grain containing diet is any healthier whatsoever. I haven't seen any evidence to support that. The
Mm-hmm.
whole thing exists because grain free sounds a lot like low carb, basically. And
Yeah.
low carb
Yeah.
actually is good for your dogs, but like grain free, you could still be a 40% carbohydrate product that's just made of potatoes and stuff like that. And it's, great. So I'm not like pounding the table for grain-free diets or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
However, they did get very and damagingly tied to this deadly canine heart disease called dilated cardiomyopathy, starting in 2018 and more or less going on ever since. That's the case because in 2018, FDA, the US FDA, announced that it was looking at that very thing. They were like, out of the blue, at a time
Mm-hmm.
when grain-free diets make up 30-40% of the overall market. Okay, so like tens of millions of people are feeding them to their dogs every day. One day out of the blue, New York Times big headline: FDA investigating whether grain-free diets are linked with this very serious, deadly heart disease. Are we
Mm-hmm.
all killing our dogs by giving them this heart disease? On our previous show, like the last time I was here, we talked a lot about that scandal and about
Yeah.
the lawsuit that my company filed over it. We sued Hill's Pet Nutrition and a cluster of veterinarians that Hill's had paid money to, alleging that they fraudulently made up this controversy. They kind of misled the FDA, published a bunch of false stuff in journals that vets read a lot, and as a result, caused this in people's minds, caused these two things to be associated: grain-free diets and dilated cardiomyopathy. When in
Mm-hmm.
reality, there was no science saying that they did whatsoever. There's like no reasonable basis for anyone to think that these diets contributed to it. And so the study that you're referencing ties to that issue. Basically, like since 2018, a handful of papers have come out about DCM and grain-free diets. They're kind of like the defendants in the lawsuit, who include these like research vets, sort of devoted their entire careers for like a 4-year period of time to
Mm-hmm.
just putting out papers that you could kind of point to and go, see, that looks a little bit, there's more smoke next to the grain. Like they published these short experiments, small number of dogs, kind of misleading,
Mm-hmm.
little overstated. The titles would have buzzy like terminology in them, but then when you dug into them, they didn't really say the thing that, well, just like 2 weeks ago, it's still in preprint. A huge study on DC, by far the biggest one that's ever been conducted, came out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was conducted by Hill's Pet Nutrition. So they're the defendant in the lawsuit, the guys who I am alleging have intentionally misled the public that grain-free diets cause DCM.
Mm-hmm.
And this study is a huge, large, and very long-term prospective controlled trial of how dogs react in terms of their cardiac parameters when fed a cluster of different kinds of grain-containing, grain-free different diets. They have 4 different diets. They had really robust controls. So they have control diets they're comparing against. And they looked at these animals for a year and a half. Okay. They fed them this diet for a year and a half, which is incredibly expensive to do. Like, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
prior to this one, the only, there are some like DCM studies, dietary DCM studies that like 6 weeks, something
Right.
like that. But like, you want to keep doing this for a year and a half. It's a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
Phil's Pet Nutrition has the money to do it, and they carried it out. And wouldn't you know it, a thing. They found absolutely no connection between whether a diet was grain free, whether it contained peas or other legumes, and whether dogs have any of the parameters associated with DCM, enlarged heart, or anything else like it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like why it's particularly notable though is the entire study was carried out 2019 to 2021. So we're talking today in the summer of 25. So for some reason, Hills carried out this whole big study, and then when the results didn't show what they wanted it to show, they just sat on it. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
publish. It would have contributed a ton to the public's understanding of this disease, but no, it wouldn't be good for their theory that, as we explained in our lawsuit, that no, we got to make the public believe that DCM is caused by grain-free diets, and so they just
Right.
sat on it. So it has big ramifications for our lawsuit, which is presently kind of like in a limbo phase because it's with an appellate court, and
Mm-hmm.
they take a really long time. You know this stuff from your ties to the legal profession. Like appellate court is like an uneventful time in litigation generally. It's like the court, we have filed all the papers we're going to file. The other side has filed all the papers they're going to file. And now the court is digesting all that and writing up a big piece of writing, deciding the issues for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so this study is relevant to the lawsuit. The fact that they had this information the whole time and had just been sitting on it for
Mm-hmm.
years is super relevant. At the time we're recording this, though, that's what I can tell you about the extent of its use. It's very relevant to the lawsuit. It will be made use of, but at this point, I can't say anything more than that. But yeah, it's really damning, and it's
Mm-hmm.
also like for anybody listening to this, like this is the thing you want to point your vet to when your vet says, well, I know your dog has diabetes and all, but I still think you shouldn't feed it this low carbohydrate dog food because I'm worried about DCM. You just show them this study. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
punchy.
Yeah, two of my dogs eat a raw diet. One of my oldest actually eats the KetoNatural Pet Foods, and he likes it a lot. And I did that for him because he has dementia. He has a history of cancer. And so it made sense to cut out those carbohydrates because it's great for their mental health,
It's
their
changes
cognitive
brain.
health.
It changes
Just, yeah.
brain for sure. It's like there's no, even in veterinary circles, there's no debate that reducing carbohydrate, like putting a dog on a ketogenic diet, reduces seizure frequency if they have like epilepsy. There's no debate about that.
Yeah.
Like their
And
brain does work differently.
same for humans. So if anyone's listening to
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
same for
exactly.
humans, literally.
Yep.
But it's funny with the raw diet every time. And, we've switched vets a few times and I'm with one I really like now, but every time I would see a new one, they're like, oh, you feed raw, like your dog's going to be really sick or they're going to get salmonella, or they would just start saying crazy things. Their teeth are going to rot. And wouldn't you know it, I went to the vet maybe a week or two ago and the vet was like, wow, I've never seen Pomeranians with teeth like this good. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, they eat a raw diet. And she was like, oh, well, what else? I said, nope, raw diet. And she was
What
like,
else? Give me a break.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
so I
There's just
think for
no.
her, it was like shifting that paradigm in real time. Like I saw the wheels just churning and she's like, oh, interesting. And then, one of my other dogs was getting a lot of UTIs and stuff. And they tried to recommend the Hills. It might've been their kidney or their bladder or something. And I started to talk to them about the content and the makeup of that food. And needless to say, we don't work together anymore, me and that vet. And it's not I know more than you. It's not I'm challenging you. It's just simply like, have you truly looked into this or are you getting a kickback from them? Did they pay for your education? Do you do their CEs? And so I'm not trying to point the finger at anyone, but if it's pointed in the right direction and it's looking at the right person.
Yeah,
So,
it's like I do it in writing and in media appearances like this one, but when it comes to individual veterinarians, I just choose not to engage. Honestly, like
yeah,
I just pretend like I don't know what I'm talking about. And just, oh, okay, just do what I'm going to do,
right.
because it just doesn't move. There's no, there's 100,000 vets in the United States. That's not. I don't believe that it's worth your time to have fights with people that are also trying to do good things and might be able to help you with your dog with all kinds of stuff in order to persuade that. Like, think the amount of, I have zero doubt in my mind, my hand before God, that 9 out of 10 veterinarians that I talk to, you give me enough of an audience with them, I will convert them to seeing the world the same way I do. The evidence is just so clear. It's
Yeah.
not, it's just undeniable. But it takes time. You have to give people a lot of factual predicate, like a lot of
Hmm.
foundation on stuff that they don't appreciate. It takes time to get them. And it's just like not realistic in a professional encounter, like an
Hmm.
appointment with your vet. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I feel the urge, but I
Right.
try to push it down.
Yeah. So, for pet parents listening, you don't have to challenge your vet, but if you're questioning what they say or it goes against your belief system, you could go home and think that through. You could find a new vet. That's what we did. We finally found a vet that we truly appreciate, that we feel like, stays up to date on any new studies, doesn't have this mindset from the 90s of like, okay, it's just this hard kibble that you can buy anywhere with 60% carbohydrate makeup. And so I think that's just advocating for yourself, advocating for your dog. And I think we as consumers are learning to do that more.
So yes, I think that's right. Um, However, let me summarize some data from a yet to be published manuscript that I'm working on now that I hope will be published in an academic journal probably next year. I hope to have it submitted before the end of the year. I hope it could be weeks, but I just have so many things. But
Yeah.
this is the experiment that I carried out. I hired a firm that does polling and surveys, and they impaneled two groups of folks. One is dog owners, tried to make it representative by demographic characteristics of people in the U.S. Okay, dog owners in the U.S. got some 400 people, and the other is veterinary professionals. Okay, vet technicians practicing in the United States right now. And we did the exact same thing with both groups. We asked them to complete a survey. And the
Hmm.
survey is composed of largely, it's a few dozen, it's they sound like 30 questions overall, but like a couple dozen of them are nutritional science questions where there are clear yes no answers. Not tight like, or not loosey like, is a raw diet healthy? Like that
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Hmm.
But like, there have been studies published showing that this is correlated with this, like very tight, from legal practice. One thing is you got to ask tight questions. You want to get the answers you want, you have to make it so that people can't fudge the answer. So
Right.
all of our questions are very tight. They have clear, true, false answers. And
Hmm.
we asked both groups to complete all the surveys. What did they do? Well, it probably won't surprise you that neither group did particularly well. There's a lot of subjects where everyone is missing the answer 2/3 of the time on
Hmm.
big, important stuff that has relevance to the kind of chronic disease problems that dogs experience at epidemic levels in the US. But the
Hmm.
second and punchier finding is that in numerous instances, the lay pet owners outperform the veterinarians, and in no instances do the veterinarians outperform the pet owners. Okay.
Wow.
So you can very, very fairly describe this as showing that dog owners know more about lay dog owners, know more
Hmm.
about nutritional science when it comes to dogs than the veterinarians that they go to for advice. What do you do with that evidence, that thing? Like, do you just kind of look around for the right vet, one that seems to be more aligned with your own thinking? Do you write off the nutritional advice that your vet offers you at baseline? That's a different conversation. It's a
Hmm.
tough conversation because I think you can with a pretty very reasonable people could say the best choice, you want to make your dog as healthy as possible. One thing you need to do is not listen to your vet's nutritional advice. there's good evidence to support that logic. That's not
Hmm.
just like overblown reactionary type stuff. It's like the
Right.
very big issues, the things that have links to mortality, obesity, metabolism, body composition, like that stuff, the vets are systematically wrong about it.
Hmm.
You follow their advice, you are going to do worse for your dog than if you don't follow their advice. And so, yeah, it's a interesting world. It's like this exists. This like knowledge gap exists because they're taught information a very, very different way than
Hmm.
we are. Very siloed. It's heavily influenced by industry, and it's problematic in a cluster of other ways. But what you
Hmm.
do about that? How do you fix that? That's bad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that isn't how it should be. It's not a functioning public health system. You need to correct that. How do you correct that? Is a challenge. It's
Right.
like a generational type challenge. You can't fix it with a few news stories, you know? And so
I mean,
thankfully I'm only don't let my bald head confuse you. I'm only 43. So I got a few more, God willing, a few more years of doing this.
I think it could be the same for humans and human doctors. I mean, think about some of the advice that some of I don't want to just say older doctors, but we'll just go ahead and say a,
Yeah.
a certain generation of
Yeah.
doctors. They sit there and look you dead in your eye and say, peanut butter is a source of protein. You're like, well, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
predominantly fat,
Yeah.
not that high in protein. But I mean, we kind of have the same thing. And I think you saw a lot of that previously where people would just listen to their doctor's advice, like, yeah, eat a peanut butter sandwich before bed so your sugar doesn't drop while you sleep. That's why you're
Yeah.
waking up.
Yeah.
Like
Don't
crazy
want to wake
things
up
that,
hungry.
yeah. And now we can look back and be like, wait a second. Or like, yeah, think about the fads we've even seen in humans between like, gosh, just different diets of like no fruit, fruit is bad. And then all of a sudden, only fruit, only vegetables. I mean, I think we could see a lot of correlations with what happens in dog food and human food, you know?
Think it's not off base. I personally think that it's qualitatively different. That like the vet side is not just different by a matter of degrees, but that it's a whole different beast worse. Like
Yeah.
here's the example I always put in front of people when I say that. If you buy there are only 28, 29 vet schools in the United States, okay? So like there aren't 50 different veterinary nutrition textbooks. There's like one.
Right.
And if you buy that book and you look on the back cover of it, there is a huge piece of art. It is a Hill's Pet Nutrition logo.
Yeah.
Okay. The textbook that is used to train these people was created by a corporation that has a very vested interest in promoting exactly in shaping the way these people think about important issues. Their products have very clear common qualities, most notably high carbohydrate intake or content.
Hmm.
And so it's like you can't tell like this is a public company. It's a division of Colgate Palmolive. They'll literally get sued if they go out there doing anything other than try to make profit for their shareholders. Okay,
Right.
they are
Right.
literally breaking the law. So you're not putting out. You're not trying to educate a bunch of doctors not to feed your dog food. That's just not a thing. And it's just
Right.
not the case that in like human medicine, McDonald's or Walmart or is on the back cover of
Right.
the textbook. It's so comprehensive in vet
Hmm.
nutrition world, and it's like I the way that the most direct analogy to me is there was a time, and it was not a short period of time, when doctors in the United States did not realize that smoking causes lung cancer.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the folks who did the most to educate them in that perspective was cigarette companies. Like they all sold a product that had one thing in common. It's tobacco. And
Hmm.
if it's bad for their entire business. It's very like that with a company like Hill's Pet Nutrition and Carbohydrate. It's like they won't exist if you come to believe that the products they make are systematically unhealthy. And so they have to work really hard to influence veterinary perspectives. They've rolled out all these prescription quote
Hmm.
diets that allow them to market directly to vets. It's a pickle. It's a pickle. It's got all kinds of interesting I don't know. It's gonna be a long game.
Yeah. So what's next for Keto Natural Pet Foods? What do you guys have going on that is new or upcoming?
we're selling shares to the public. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, this guy seems like he's on the right side of history, or this lawsuit's probably going to win and he's going to make a lot of money, or you just know this guy, I buy into what this guy's selling. You can buy with as little as $250. You can buy some shares of our company. We're trying to raise money from our customers and other people that believe in our mission, as opposed to big sources of capital, at least to as large a degree as we can, or make sure those people have a voice in how we develop the company. And so, yeah, you can we'll put the link in the show notes and you can visit. You can, like I said, there's all kinds of like specials that we're offering. If you feed your dog our products anyway, you can basically like pay for your whole investment in the discounts we'll give you. If you invest somewhat larger amounts of money, we give you like a bunch of bonus shares. You get a right to influence the board of directors, all kinds of stuff like that. And it's really simple process. It's not just like, you don't have to be a quote accredited investor. You don't have to be like a venture capitalist that does this stuff. It's like you can invest in a startup that's on the right side of history, that's about to have this big regulatory change go in its favor. Just with like a few clicks of the mouse, really. It's just like you have to get information about, it's like anything else in e-commerce. It's that simple. It's like if you have a Robinhood account, it's very much like that.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited for you guys. And it'll be interesting how this plays out with the lawsuit, with the new stuff. Just we'll see. We'll see how things go. It'll be interesting how it all plays out. And I'm sure you'll be on again to give us an update that will help pet owners even more, help them make, good decisions.
Yeah. I mean, if there's some of the things that could, stay tuned. It's like this experiment that I've been working on that, that'll get published soon enough. And there will be, it'll be important to promote those findings. And so I'll probably come back to discuss that stuff. If anything develops in the lawsuit, you'll be one of the first people I'll talk to about it. But it's like, this might be grandiose kind of statement or whatever, like self-involved, but like we founded our company in 2017. I published the book in 2016. You're just kind of running through like, oh, there's this lawsuit and there's this regulatory change. Like you take 10 years back, pet food was a worse place. Like I do believe we've been on the right side of these issues and we played a major role in bringing them about. And they are making changes, incremental. There's a ton of work left to do, but we are making positive changes. Like a world in which all pet owners understand the carbohydrate content of their dog's diet is a better place to be than one in which they're all getting the wool pulled over their eyes. So yeah. Awesome. I'd like to be back. I enjoy talking to you, and I'm sure we can talk the rest of the day if we wanted to.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on. Like I said, we'll definitely have you back. And for anyone listening, check out the show notes for any of those links that we referenced, and you can always reach out.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.